Judgment Day will wait. Genre, literary fiction, spiritual romance, post-apocalyptic. Judgment Day will wait. Part 1. The Awakening, Days 30-21. The countdown begins. Reality bends. Two souls meet. Chapter 1. Day 30. The sky opens. And I will show wonders in the heavens above and signs on the earth below. Book of Joel. It began with silence, the kind that hums like an echo waiting to be filled. Then the sky cracked, not with thunder or lightning, but with light, raw, impossible light, searing through clouds like a wound through the heavens. At first, Jude thought it was a satellite flare or maybe the aurora slipping down from its polar home, drunk on the world's grief. But when the light sharpened, bloomed, and held, a sigil the size of a continent, pulsing with the rhythm of a living heart, he felt something inside him split. He closed his eyes like a child in the dark. Across the world, phones lifted like prayers. Every camera lens trembled. In Argentina, a woman fell to her knees and whispered, "At last." In Tokyo, traffic crashed as the skies flickered. In Lagos, someone climbed to the rooftop of an abandoned church to sing. 30 petals. That's what people began to call them, petals of celestial fire, spinning outward from a center glyph that none could translate, though all somehow understood. A countdown. A sentence. 30 days. Jude Bishop didn't believe in signs. He believed in rusted elevators, in unpaid bills, in the shallow ache of a bourbon hangover, and the heavier kind that lingered long after his wife left. He believed in the smell of copier toner and the taste of cold coffee left on the break room table. He did not believe in angels, or judgment, or divine clocks painted across the firmament like a cosmic billboard. Still he stared. In the alley behind his apartment, surrounded by overflowing dumpsters and the flicker of a broken neon pharmacy sign, Jude lit a cigarette and watched the sky like it might give him a reason not to scream. A cat yowled from somewhere above. The sigil pulsed again. He took a drag. "It's not real," he muttered. But the light didn't blink. By noon, people had already begun to change. A man wearing a priest's collar wandered into the grocery store barefoot, handing out communion wafers and weeping in 7 languages. A street preacher hugged a known meth dealer and called him brother. Someone tried to sell Judgment Day survival kits on Etsy. A woman in the stairwell told Jude that her mother had floated 6 feet off the ground while whispering old hymns. "We're being tested," she whispered, trembling. "Like Sodom or Nineveh." Jude rolled his eyes. "Or maybe it's just aliens." She didn't laugh. She just looked at him like he was already damned. At 3:47 p.m., the first petal dimmed. It didn't vanish. It simply went dark. No longer pulsing, no longer glowing. People called it the fading. Twitter renamed it Petal 1. The Vatican issued a press release. The president went live from a bunker. Someone made a TikTok sound from the crackling sky and it hit 1 million views in under an hour. 30 petals. Now 29. And counting. Jude turned off the TV and opened the window. The air smelled charged, like before a storm, but sweeter. Ozone mixed with lavender. He hated that it smelled beautiful, as if the end of the world had the audacity to be poetic. He sat on the sill and pulled out his phone to text his sister, the one who used to drag him to church before the diagnosis. But he stopped halfway through typing, "You seeing this?" Instead, he typed, "You were right." He didn't send it. He watched the sky until his eyes burned, until the glyph blurred into something softer, something almost floral. Petals. Why petals? As he stared, the memory bloomed. Emma, his wife, kneeling in their old garden, dirt beneath her nails, smiling up at him through sweat and sunlight. "Everything begins with decay," she had said once, pressing a dead seed into his palm. "Even beauty, especially beauty." He hadn't understood it then. He wasn't sure he did now. But something in his chest ached with her absence, with the impossibility of calling her, of fixing what he'd broken. The sky cracked again. A second petal flickered. Later that night, he walked. Not far, just down to the harbor where the sea held the sky like a mirror. People stood on the edge like witnesses. Some held candles. Some held children. Some held each other. Jude held nothing. He watched the reflection of the sigil shimmer in the water, distorted but intact, and felt the terrible intimacy of it, like it was looking back. "I don't believe in this," he whispered to the waves. And yet he waited, as if waiting might change something. The world had 30 days. He didn't know what for. But when the sky opens, even skeptics look up. Even broken men light candles. Even the damned start counting. Chapter 2. Day 29. A World Unmoored. The center does not hold, but maybe something else does. Fragment from an anonymous street mural. Day 29. The world didn't end in a single explosion. It splintered. Not with fire, but with doubt. At 8:16 a.m., the second petal disappeared. Not faded, vanished, as if some unseen hand had plucked it from the celestial bloom and carried it away. The glyph pulsed dimmer now, slower, more mournful, as if it too felt the clock inside its bones. By 9 o'clock a.m., the markets had collapsed. Hong Kong shuttered its stock exchange first, then Frankfurt, then Wall Street, after a 3,000-point plunge in the first hour of trading. The headlines flickered like confessions. Global run-on currency banks closed in over 30 countries, crypto vanishes in cyber attack, or judgment. Can money survive the apocalypse? No one had answers. Only speculation, only spirals, and prayer. Jude stepped over broken glass outside the bakery. A man with bloodied knuckles knelt in the middle of the street, palms up, muttering verses in a language Jude couldn't name. Around him, others joined, wordless and weeping. Some lay prostrate on the asphalt, trembling. Some just screamed. Not at each other, at nothing, at everything. He paused, watched them. "What are you doing?" Jude asked a woman beside him. She didn't look at him, only kept rocking, whispering, "It's coming, it's coming, it's coming." Jude didn't ask what. In the grocery store, 2 teenage girls lit sage in the cereal aisle. A middle-aged man dumped water bottles into his cart, sobbing softly with every thud. A mother stood frozen, staring at an empty shelf where diapers had once been, as if that empty shelf had cracked her soul wide open. The cashier played a children's lullaby on her phone and refused to make eye contact with anyone. She didn't charge Jude for his items. She didn't charge anyone. Jude took only bread and aspirin and left a crumpled 20 beside the register because old habits die slower than worlds. At 2:13 p.m., a megachurch preacher live-streamed from his rooftop in Dallas, claiming to be one of the 2 witnesses from Revelation. "This is the hour," he bellowed, voice shaking with ecstasy. "The sword cometh." 10,000 viewers watched, then 50,000. Then the stream cut out, mid-sentence, mid-glory, mid-lie. His church caught fire 6 minutes later. No one knew how, or if it mattered anymore. In contrast, a quiet imam in Istanbul told his followers, "This is neither the end nor the beginning. This is the breath between. Breathe with it." Someone posted the quote on Twitter with an image of the sigil. It went viral, then disappeared. Everything did. In Jude's building, the neighbors started knocking on each other's doors. Not with weapons, with candles, with trembling hope. A man from 4C came by with a bowl of stew and no shoes on. He said his name was Elijah, and that he used to be a war photographer before the shame caught up with him. He gave Jude a spoon and said nothing more. A girl from 5A asked if she could pray in his living room. He didn't say yes, but he didn't stop her either. She knelt on his rug and prayed to a God she wasn't sure existed. She cried for her father, her dog, the world, and herself, in that order. Jude sat in the kitchen and listened. The sigil pulsed again. This time it made the windows hum. Mira hadn't come back to the alley. He didn't expect her to. She was probably halfway to some hilltop chapel, or hiding in an underground train tunnel with a pack of end times believers and a pocket full of grace. He didn't know why he missed her, or why her voice echoed louder than the preacher's. Everything begins with decay. He didn't know how to pray, but he tried anyway, just in case. That night, sirens stopped. Not because things had calmed, but because there weren't enough hands left to pull the levers. The city quieted, not into peace, but into pause. A trembling, breathless stillness. Jude stood on the rooftop, bread in hand, watching a group of strangers light candles in the courtyard below. One of them sang something that sounded ancient. Another danced. A child laughed. A man shouted at the stars. And through it all, the sigil above blinked slower and slower. 28 petals now, their light pale but firm. He thought of Emma again. The way she used to trace stars on his arm in the dark and whisper, "There's more to us than this." He hadn't believed her then. He wasn't sure he did now. But the world had tilted. The sky had cracked. And love, maybe, was the only thing left that made any sense. Chapter 3. Day 28. Her name is Mira. In the end, we do not fall in love in churches or meadows or moonlight. We fall in love in grocery aisles and broken alleys, where no one is watching. The riot didn't start with fire. It started with fear. Like everything else now, Jude saw it unravel from the sidewalk, a spark in the crowd outside Marlowe's market, where a shipment of canned goods had just arrived. No one had seen a restock in 3 days. Someone shouted, someone shoved, and within seconds, humanity began to spill over itself in waves of noise and hunger. He didn't move, didn't panic, didn't flinch when a glass bottle shattered near his feet. He just stood there, clutching the collar of his coat like it might keep the whole world from unraveling. Then he saw her. She moved like smoke, fast, light, unnoticed. A woman in a cracked leather jacket, hair tied up in a knot that had stopped caring hours ago, eyes sharp and scanning. She slipped past the chaos and into the side entrance of the store while the crowd swarmed the front. Jude followed, but he didn't know why. Not consciously. Maybe it was the way she moved, like she was part of the building itself. Or maybe it was the way the sigil above, pale now but pulsing, seemed to glow just a little brighter when it caught the copper in her hair. She didn't see him, at first. Inside, the store was empty, ransacked, shelves crooked, fluorescent lights flickering with the soft buzz of an old song forgotten by the world. She was crouched by a stack of toppled boxes, shoving a loaf of bread into her backpack like a magician hiding a dove. Jude stepped forward. The floor creaked. She turned fast, faster than made sense, and pulled a knife. It wasn't big, just a pocket blade, but her hand didn't tremble. "Step back," she said. Her voice was tired, not shaky, not angry, just tired. Jude raised his hands. "I'm not here for the bread." She narrowed her eyes. "Then why are you here?" He hesitated. "I don't know." They stared at each other, the chaos outside pounding like a distant drumbeat. Two strangers in a hollowed-out store, watching the world end and pretending it hadn't already started. He nodded toward the loaf. "You're gonna want to hide that better. People are getting jumpy." She didn't respond. Jude took a slow step forward, then reached down and picked up a single can of peaches from the floor. Dented, probably expired. He held it up like a white flag. "Dinner," he said. "For me, not you, obviously." The edge of her mouth lifted, just barely. They sat against the cold tile floor in the frozen foods aisle. Nothing was frozen anymore. Everything thawed in puddles around them, like corpses melting in slow motion. She unzipped her bag but didn't eat. Jude cracked the can and handed her half without asking. She took it. No thanks. No apology. They ate in silence. Eventually he asked, "What's your name?" She looked at him for a long time, like the question itself was suspicious or sacred. "Mira." "Jude." She nodded, like she was filing that away with everything else. He noticed she wore 3 rings, one on her thumb, one on her pinky, and one hanging from a cord around her neck. None matched. "Where were you before this?" he asked. She took a slow breath. "Alive." It wasn't an answer, but he understood it. They left through the back. The riot had spilled into smoke and sobs. A trash can burned in the corner, watched by no one. The sigil overhead was dimming again, one more petal flickering like a dying ember. 28 left. Mira pulled her hood up. "You live nearby?" Jude nodded. "A block over." "Alone?" He didn't answer. She didn't push. As they reached the alley, a boy ran past them with blood on his shoes and a prayer on his lips. Mira tensed. Jude watched her, not the boy. "You always carry a knife?" he asked. She shrugged. "Only since the sky opened." He laughed softly, unexpectedly. She didn't. Before she turned to go, she handed him a crust from the loaf. Not a thank you. Not a gift. Just an offering. A shared edge. Their fingers brushed. It was brief. It was nothing, but it was something. "See you around, Jude. Will you?" Mira smiled. Not a real smile. A ghost of one. If the world doesn't end first. The petals above turned. The air shimmered. And Jude, for the first time in years, felt something like gravity pulling him not down, but toward her. Toward something.